Go ahead and get your jitters out, girl. That was gonna sound crazy. So we are recording. Do you like the way you look? I like the way I look.
Yeah.
I like the way you look too, girl. You look good.
Thank you. I wore my dad's shirt for good luck.
Did you?
His wolf shirt. I did.
So hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is where you are. Welcome to my podcast. Okay, I don't know what it's called yet. We're just calling it Just Shay and Friends for now, until I figure something out. But the podcast is basically where I talk about whatever I want and I say what I want. Okay, and my friends do too. We're opinionated. But today we're going to be talking about yelling. I had this incident and an unpopular opinion came at me. So I want to talk about it. So let's. But before that, I have a friend with me and I'm going to go ahead and let her introduce herself. Tell us your name, your generation, and anything else you want to tell us.
Okay. Hi guys. My name is Lexa. I am 30, so I'm a millennial. I am autistic, ADHD. Okay.
Thank you for sharing that with us. That was very nice of you. We really appreciate it. Thank you for sharing that. It will help us understand your opinion more.
Yeah.
Right? So let's talk about yelling, Lexa. Let's talk about it.
Oh boy.
So I'm gonna start off with my opinion on it. Basically, what I think it means is just like shouting, raising your voice, etc. Anything above like a regular tone for me. That's what I think. Is it bad or good? I don't think it's either bad or good. I just think it's communication, and it depends on how you put it. That's it.
Yeah. I would say, like a lot of things, there's a lot of nuance to it. And that is communication. I think intent matters, and there's a lot of factors that make a difference.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with you, Lexa. And I mean, let's just start off with the actual definition. We're going to look it up, okay? And I had to find the Merriam dictionary. I didn't even know Merriam had a dictionary, but but we're gonna look it up because Webster didn't do it for me. That definition was very short and it was very like blah, not enough, right? So let's look it up. Yeah, Webster just says a loud, sharp cry. Like that's not enough, right?
Cry,
honey. Yeah, honey. Okay, Merriam. They say to utter a loud cry, scream, or shout, or to give a cheer, usually in unison. That's like yelling too.
Like most things, intention really does matter. Like I try not to focus too much on the intention of things because the impact is very important as well. But I think intention really does matter here. I mean, there's yelling as in like screaming and berating at someone, but there are plenty of socially appropriate reasons to raise your voice as well. So I think there's a lot of nuance to this topic, and you really can't just like clear cut, simple answer it.
No, you can't. It's so complex. And because it's very complex, I feel that no one can really just judge based off of just what you said. We got to look at what happened before that. You know what I'm saying? We got to look at that because in my opinion, for example, in my opinion, sometimes you need to yell. Sometimes you need to. Like if you want to keep a child safe, for one, okay? And you said, stop that, stop it. You know, sometimes you need to, right? To grab attention. And as far as adult to adult communication, my main thing is some adults don't listen. A lot of them don't.
Yeah.
So if you say a thing just like a child 1, 2, 3 times and the adult has not listened, then yelling is an yell plus calling them B word, or you yell plus grab them. You know, it's always, let's look at what's happening along with the yelling. For me.
Right. Yeah. Like it really, the intention does matter. And the circumstances, like you said, what's leading up to it. Why didn't normal volume work the first time? Obviously, jumping straight from 0 to 100, just yelling, that's usually not appropriate, except, like you said, for safety. And I think safety is a very important thing to highlight, especially, for like autistic children who often don't respond to their name and things like that. Sometimes you have to shout to get their attention and keep them safe. It is what it is.
I like that, Lexa. I like that because that wasn't one of my notes. I was going to ask you, because you're, autistic. I just love to pick your brain. You're so smart. I just want to tell you
Thank you.
that. So,
Thank you.
we had talked about a time before. I think it was via chat, Instagram or something about how it's perceived that a lot of autistic people are rude and they ignore and they etc. Especially as a mom point of view, looking at a mom child point of view. And I'm going to put myself right in the middle of it.
Mm-hmm.
I will admit that I thought Ste'ce was ignoring me a lot. Now, on one hand, maybe some he does, but there are times where I'm directly speaking to him and he just kind of stares at me and then walks away. So, in those moments, I, as a mom, have found out maybe he didn't really process what I said. So, do you remember being, maybe a teenager, a little bit younger? Did you have those issues like with authority figures like adults or whatever?
Yeah, I did. Like, especially with my mom, she was really like who I felt safe with. So the way I behaved with her was a lot different. As far as other adults, I was like very much like high masking people pleaser. So I was very
Mm.
obedient. But then my mom, it was totally different.
Was there yelling in your family household? And what do you think about it?
There, there was when I was like in my preteen years. And so in a lot of ways, I know it impacts the way that I feel about yelling because I get very nervous with yelling now as an adult. Like I get very hyper vigilant because my nervous
Mm-hmm.
system like hasn't discerned if I'm safe or not. So that's an important factor for me.
My household, there was yelling, but it was never like malicious. It was just like everybody
Right.
talked really loud, except for me. I was the only one that was like, you know what I'm saying? That's how I used to talk. But all the rest of my family was
Right.
like, hey, how you doing? They're in your face. And then when everybody gets excited, it's even louder. So
Oh my God, yeah.
yeah.
My mom is she talks very loud, so when I'm on the phone with her, it's like everyone can hear. I end up shouting, like we're both just really loud, and it's like sometimes I have to speak louder to get her to absorb it. I don't like to yell at people because I know I don't usually like to be yelled at, but
Mm-hmm.
I can definitely see points in time where it's like I struggle to effectively communicate in another
Mm-hmm.
way. So I end up resorting to that experience. I feel like I'm sure you understand this. I would say as a Black woman, like I feel like people are constantly policing like the expression of Black women, and they'll be a lot quicker to tell you that you are shouting
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
versus me.
Yeah, no, I definitely can say that is true. Because I mean, I don't know versus, what other races, but I do know that as a whole, a lot of Black people are just a little bit louder. And in my case, I had a lot of brothers and sisters. I had 7 siblings. And yelling in that
Wow.
family was like, listen to me. So if you were
Yeah.
yelling above everybody else, then that meant, oh, okay, let's be quiet. And this person is trying to communicate.
Yeah.
And then at that point, you bring it back
That
down. But yeah,
right. And you come from a church family too, right?
absolutely. Absolutely. So we're just
Yeah.
constantly surrounded by a lot of people. Just constantly. Everybody talking at the same time, honey. I don't know how they even listen, but hey, that's how it is. But working in the military, I just wanted to say, man, it was terrible. I mean, people yell there, but for the reason to bring you down. You know what I'm saying? So once I start raising my voice, it's like, whoa, whoa. whoa, what is the problem? Why do you
Yeah,
have an attitude now? But
right,
if you just would have listened the first time, sir, ma'am, if you just would have
right.
listened the first time, I wouldn't have had to.
There are people who weaponize that for sure, and they just think that using their volume will make what they're saying be correct, and they think that people don't want to be yelled at. So if I just say what I'm saying louder, like I have the right answer now.
I know what you mean. I know those kind of arguments get louder and louder. It
Yeah.
don't make you right. Go ahead. It don't make you right. I love when
Yeah.
people do that because me, I'm a Libra, honey. I'm just gonna stare at you and let you get it on out. And then I'm gonna continue saying what I said because it don't matter what you said. The louder, it don't make you right.
Mhm.
Just because you're louder
Yeah.
than me, go ahead, girl. Your throat gonna hurt later. That should not be a weapon in an argument, anyways, because that's a whole
Right.
nother problem. That's a communication issue.
Yeah, definitely. It's just that I feel like that could be really said for a lot of things. Like people weaponize everything, and so it makes it like necessary to touch on that as part of a nuanced conversation because otherwise people hear what they want to hear and they justify things. Oh well, apparently yelling is a good thing. So I think it's like a necessary nuance to get into, but I feel like there are a lot of times where like yelling really can be productive and necessary in certain
Mm-hmm.
situations.
Absolutely. Um, Speaking on that, I actually read an article, which I can't name right now because I don't remember. But the gist, what I got from the article is the psychologist, I think he was, he said he did studies and found that in relationships, I guess like married couple, boyfriend, girlfriend, boyfriend, boyfriend, girlfriend, girlfriend relationship, like, romantic. In those, yelling is productive in a relation. It helps the relationship because for the individual, yelling releases whatever is there pent up. So yelling in that case
Interesting.
actually helps you from being angry in the future about that thing. So just yell about it for a second. And if your partner accepts the fact that, oh, you're just very passionate about what you're saying and you're not, don't take it in a negative way. As long as your partner is mature enough for that, yelling can be productive.
I think it can be for sure. And like we said before with intention, I think you need to be able to discern like your partner's intention. Like if, they're just being passionate and they want to say what they want to say. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that's just how it comes out, but make sure that they're not using their volume to try to like exert authority over you and create like a power imbalance and instill fear in you. I think that's very important to discern.
Absolutely. Then there's a whole nother problem.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Me. Well, welcome back. We are back from the break, and we want to touch on a real touchy subject. Okay. It's touchy and touchy. Okay. Because I feel like the most of y'all that watch me probably have kids. Y'all probably do. Maybe your kids are autistic. So we're going to talk about them. Let's talk about your kids. So I'm going to first start off by asking my friend Lexa. Lexa, do you have kids?
I do not. I am child free by choice for a number of reasons. But that said, I am very passionate about making sure that like children are treated fairly and stuff like that. Like I'm very interested in those kind of topics as a child who was, traumatized and struggling in the world. I think it's very important to still advocate for children, even if I'm not going to have them myself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I definitely agree. And same for me.
Yeah.
My upbringing was similar. There was some trauma in my childhood. And then also because there were so many of us, it was just very hard. Um, in general, there's just so many. How
Yeah.
can two parents, I complain about my two kids. I complain. And my parents had 8.
Yeah,
Y'all crazy, by the
that's
way.
crazy.
Y'all crazy, by the way. That is crazy. But yes, I feel the same way. I feel that I was not heard enough as a child. How could they? How could they? And then, others in my generation feel the same way because of how it was back in the day, especially in the Black family. Like, you don't
Right.
talk unless somebody asks you a question or unless somebody talk to you. You don't talk. Okay. And you
Right. Yes.
definitely don't say you don't like something. You like everything.
Yeah. Children were to be seen and not heard back then. So,
Facts. Facts. And I didn't want that for my kids. So I imagine that everybody in my generation is probably like that. If they have kids or plan on having kids, they're thinking like, I'm not going to be like that to my kids. Everybody thinks it.
right.
So yeah, I advocate for the kids because I want to hear their voices because they're little humans.
Absolutely.
Yes, they're still humans.
Exactly that. People, the age of 18, it's just an arbitrary number. Like, kids are just little humans. They
Mm-hmm.
are going to grow into adults, and the behaviors that are modeled for them in their childhood are going to be the foundation that brings them into adulthood. And so they need to be taught how to communicate effectively, which could include, like, situation like situationally appropriate yelling, for example, like
Yes.
maybe having like designated conversations with your kid where they know, okay, like right now you can talk however you need to. I'm teaching you
Mm-hmm.
how to negotiate, how to debate. There's a time and place. And I think those are very important skills, because otherwise there's a bunch of young adults who enter the world, clearly don't know how to communicate at all. They're
At
timid,
all.
they're afraid, they don't know how to, advocate for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I definitely agree with that. So that takes us into our first question. First off, we're gonna start by asking uh, a question. Is it okay for parents to yell at kids? And we're going to take out the fact that you might have an autistic child. We're just talking about in general, any of your kids. Is it okay for parents to yell at kids? My answer is yes. And it's okay for a lot of reasons. Number one, if they're hurting themselves or about to hurt somebody else, if they're about to, and you yelling is going to stop them or get their attention, you need to. Secondly, if they didn't listen the first or second time, I always give my kids 3 chances, because first chance, you might not have understood what I said. Second chance, you might not have known the seriousness of it. Third chance is a yell. Okay. That's my thing. So you tell me, what do you think? Is it okay for parents to yell at their kids?
Yeah, there are definitely situations that really call for it. Like we said, the safety thing, keeping your children safe is the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
So even if that means like having to apologize for startling or scaring them afterwards, you know what I mean? I think apologies can be an important part of this as well.
Ooh.
Sometimes you need to yell to communicate effectively in the moment, and that might require some, like, aftercare, like repairing, like, hey, I was, explaining why you needed to yell, um, like to explain the seriousness, like you touched on. But
Yes,
I
ma'am.
think there are definitely moments that call for it.
Yes, ma'am. I agree. I feel like I a lot of times when my kids were younger, I would tell Heaven, yelling was necessary because there was no time to explain.
Mm-hmm.
And even as a 6 year old, she understood that I had no time to explain. I had to. Now I can explain. And in that moment, I say, do you have any questions? And I let her ask whatever she wants about the situation. And then I let her tell me what she didn't like about it.
That's really healthy. That's really, fostering her confidence, to be able to feel safe talking to you and letting you know how she feels. And I think a lot of parents, maybe it's like their ego gets in the way. They feel like, I don't have to explain myself. You're a child.
People say that they don't have to explain themselves to a child.
Yeah. And
Why do people feel
it's
like
so,
that?
I feel like that's in a way like just perpetuating a cycle where they felt
Mm-hmm.
unheard. And in some way, they're not able to break that.
Mm,
fully with their own child. And but ultimately, like we said, you're raising children that are going to grow into adults. They need to
mm-hmm,
feel
mm-hmm,
confident and safe being able to communicate. And in the past, people were just, they were having more children, first of all. Like a lot of kids was more common in the past. So
mm-hmm.
obedience was more of a focus, keeping everyone in line, less individualism and communication. There are a lot of different factors that come into play there, I think.
I did a lot of stuff during that break. I
Yeah.
was in like hyper mom mode. I went to check on the baby. I checked on Heaven. I checked on Ste'ce. I checked on Chloe. And then I played a little bit with Ste'ce with the cards. I was like, cleaned up the kitchen a little bit. Doing so much, honey. All right, so we are back, guys. Thanks for sticking with us. If you stuck with us for this long, I feel like you've grown. Good job. Um, we're back. Lex is still here.
I'm still here.
Yeah, we got one more topic to talk about. We are not done. We are not done, honey. We got one more topic to talk about. And the topic is well, first of all, we're talking about yelling. We gave our opinion about what it means to us. Is it right or wrong? We gave our opinion. Now we're talking about yelling, kids versus parents, parents versus kids, etc. And the question I want to ask myself, my friend Lexa, and you guys is it okay for kids to yell at their parents? In general, just in general, if they mad, you know what I'm saying? If you didn't
I
listen the
feel
first
like,
time, you know what I'm saying? Is that okay?
I mean, if in the case of the child not listening, I say not really, because I mean, are they trying to, be insubordinate? Like their intention matters. If they're getting just frustrated and feel like you're not hearing them, then I think that could be worth listening to, even if you expect an apology from them afterwards. Like, hey, I didn't like you talking to me like that, but I hear you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I agree with you, Lexa. And in my opinion, to answer the question, is it okay for kids to yell at their parents? In my opinion, I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes because something happened to me. I got a little story time. You want to hear it, Lexa? I got a little story time
Yeah.
because we got some time. So we're going to talk about it. And I'm sure you've heard it before because you've been following me for a while. There was a time when Heaven was maybe about 9 or 10 years old. Ste'ce was probably the same age. They're Irish twins. They're a year apart. But anyways, so there was a time that only myself and Heaven did chores around the house. And then when my niece and my sister were there, they did chores as well. But for the most part, it was just me and Heaven. Ste'ce didn't do any chores. Okay. Because, at that time, I didn't think that he could do it. And that's a whole nother story. We could talk about that later. I have processed that and I can talk about it, but later. Okay. We're talking about yelling right now. Okay. So during that time, we had little family meetings every once in a while because I will, even back then, was very big on communication. But up until that point, I had never allowed Heaven to raise her voice at me, and she had never even attempted, to yell at me ever. Up until that point, she called a family meeting. Either I called it or she called it. I don't remember, but we were there. We were in a family meeting, and she said, "I think it's effed up." She said the word. I think it's effed. Imagine 9-year-old Heaven. Imagine. She was so sweet at that age. Like, how little girls are. Like, they're the best around that age. She was so sweet. She had never said a bad word to me. You know what I'm saying? And she was like, I think it's effed up that Ste'ce don't do no chores. I do everything around here. And she said that. And I was like, what? And she was like, I do everything around here. And so I started talking immediately. I cut her off. I was like, what you mean you do everything? You know what I'm saying? Because I was working. And then also I was cooking,
Hmm.
cleaning. I was doing stuff too. So I kind of got defensive in a way. And so I cut her off.
Hmm.
And I was like, don't talk. You know what I'm saying? Don't talk to me like that.
Right.
At that point, she ain't even start yelling yet. So I guess in her mind, she was like, she not listening. And family meetings are about listening. That's why I had always drilled into her head everybody's supposed to listen. So in her mind, I was not following the rules. So after that, she started yelling. And she just repeated what she said. I do everything, in a tone loud, honey. I do everything around here. Ste'ce don't do no chores. I clean the bathrooms. I clean my room. I clean the kitchen. I cook on Wednesday because she did. Even as a 9-year-old, she knew how to cook. I cook on Wednesdays. I do my laundry. I help with Ste'ce laundry. I help with Ste'ce's, sensory time because back then we had to help him, introduce him to these things that you might like,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So I do that. I do that. I tie Ste'ce. She was going off on me, but loud, honey, yelling. And the reason why she got to say this so much is because when she started yelling, I was like, whoa, because she ain't never yelled before. And she's not a yeller.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, it made me listen. It made me listen. And then I was like, I dismissed the meeting after she was done. And I went in my room and cried. I was like, I am the world's worst mother. Cause while I'm trying to coddle Ste'ce, I'm forgetting about heaven. So
Wow.
I said that to say this. If she had not yelled that day, would I have started teaching Ste'ce his chores? Would he now be independent, so independent that I don't even have to watch him when he's doing his chores? I don't even check on him. Would it be that way? Would it turn out that way? No, I don't think so. I don't
Yeah.
think so. So
See,
saying
it's
that,
effective sometimes.
yes, very effective. And it was a positive outcome. So my answer is yes, I think it is. It depends on what the child is saying. And in order to know what the child is saying,
Mm-hmm.
you have to listen. And y'all don't want to listen.
Yeah.
Y'all don't want to listen. Parents don't want to listen. And I'm speaking for him because I am a parent. And I was like that. I didn't want to listen. Because you yelling at who? That's what I want to say.
Yeah.
Right? And Lexi, you don't have
Yeah.
kids, so I want to know your opinion. In that situation, what was,
I mean,
go ahead.
I think that, like we've been saying, sometimes like that's really it's a way of effectively communicating, and like we touched on before a bit, maybe sometimes the kid, it might be appropriate for them to apologize afterwards. I think that
Mm-hmm.
that should be done in adult situations too, though. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that intent really does matter. If a kid is yelling because they don't want to do something, that's no, that's not okay because they're not
Mm-hmm.
being respectful either. But if a kid is trying to feel heard and you're not letting them feel heard, they're doing the
Mm.
next best thing they could think of. And especially if they see their parents modeling that for them, then it becomes, well, why is it okay for you to shout to get your point across if you're not feeling
Mm.
heard, but I can't? You gotta teach them how to interact as
Girl.
people.
Yeah, say that, girl. Why is it okay? Why is it okay for us, but they can't? And you be like, I had to yell, honey. Even if you apologize to them after, but you still not letting them yell? Come on.
Right.
That ain't fair. That ain't fair. And it is about fairness for me, because I remember a lot of details about my childhood where I felt like life was not fair. Adults were
Yeah.
not fair. Adults were mean. They were
Mm-hmm.
evil. Some of them I had a lot of weird names. One of my uncles I
Yeah.
used to call him Mr. Burns. That's how mean I thought he was. But in reality, now as an adult, like he's an okay guy. He was just he didn't
Right.
explain nothing. He didn't explain nothing. He was just like, go sit down, and that's it. And if you
Mm-hmm.
didn't, then you in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, versus go
That's
sit
enough.
down because I'm trying to do something.
Yeah. I think that also kind of comes back to intent because people, they're just trying to get their kid to listen, exert authority, and still fear, but they're not actually teaching them to listen because, okay, I know my mom knows best for me. So, like, I know that she's thinking in my best interest. So I should listen to her. Instead, it's teaching them like blind faith and obedience. And that's not really setting them up for success, because then when they enter the world, how are they going to be? And what you said about fairness, I hear a lot of parents say, well, life's not fair, the real world's not fair. And that's true. And that's all the more reason
Mhm.
your kids need to have a safe space at home and feel safe communicating with you. So that way
Mhm.
they are better equipped to handle the rest of the world. They need to feel safe
Mhm.
somewhere and heard somewhere.
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. You said that. You said that because I remember a time as a baby adult. You know what I'm saying? I bumped into a lot of trouble. A lot. I talked about it in a previous video that I was not in Ste'ce's life when he was a baby. You know what I'm saying? I was there, but my mom was mostly taking care of him because I didn't know what I was doing, honey. And then I ran into a lot of bumps in life, but I didn't run to my mom. And I'm not talking bad about my mom. I'm just saying back in the day,
Mhm.
parents didn't really explain things to kids and stuff like that. It stuck in my head that she probably wasn't going to listen, even as an adult. So it lingered
Mhm.
as an adult. I know it's not true now, but as a baby adult, I didn't run to my mom. I went to my sister. When I was, man, it was bad, honey. I can't even talk about it, girl. It was bad. I ran to my sister. I didn't go to my mom. And then years later, I guess my sister and I were talking about it, and my mom overheard, and she was like, "What?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, you didn't know about it." She was very upset. Her feelings were hurt, but I couldn't. What could I say? Like, my bad.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. I think relationship dynamics have just overall changed a lot, in a good way. People, they would have their kids. A lot of times people would have kids just to have help around the farm or whatever they had. And it wasn't really about fostering individual relationships with them. It wasn't
No.
about teaching them how to communicate. It was, about making them listen to you.
Right.
And a
Right.
lot of respect was actually fear. And that's, the kids are going to become adults and they're going to have a lot of damage to unlearn, where if
Mm-hmm.
you lay a better foundation from the start with communication, they'll be a lot better off and they won't have to go back and fix things the same way.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And I had a point that you already said, girl. Every time I have a point, you say it. That's why I be like, every time I have a point, you say. Any last thoughts on the subject?
Oh,
Yelling in
oh.
general, kids, parents, any of it, relationship wise, because we did touch on that a little bit.
I feel like um pretty much kind of to reiterate a bit of what I said, like about there being other factors that matter, like intention and like the other communication around it. I feel like yelling is something that you can't really just isolate as a single issue. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot more depth to it. And so it can definitely be effective communication if there are other tools in place to also
Mm-hmm.
make it effective communication. And those are things that you talk about with the person. So ideally, you already feel safe in the relationship with whoever it is, where the yelling isn't going to scar you, damage you, trigger you. Ideally, what you're working with there and are able to communicate. And those parts matter just as much as the yelling itself.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh, very well said again, honey. My
Thank
last thoughts on you welcome, girl. I could talk to you for
you.
hours. Anyways, my last thoughts on yelling. Um, as far as yelling in adult to adult relationships, some people need to be yelled at, honey. That's my last thoughts.
Mhm.
And I stands on it. I stands on it. And if you know me, when you get to know me, you'll see I don't really yell that much. Not at all.
Mhm.
Unless you're very far away. You know what I'm saying? I prefer to speak
Yeah.
like this. I prefer to you got to get in close because I know you. I probably care about you. You got to get in close. So I allow you in my bubble. And to me, that's something, intimate I share with only my loved ones. So if
Right.
I'm yelling, then you know that, oh, this is serious because Shay doesn't do that if you know me. Now, a stranger, I probably would never yell at a stranger because I don't care about them. Like, I don't care if you hear me.
Right. Yeah.
Like, get out of here. Okay. And as far
Yeah,
as
exactly.
kids, my last thoughts is it's okay to yell at kids, situational. All right. How can you listen if you reacting instantly? There's no way. There's no, and you know what? One of Ste'ce's ABA therapists told me this one time. I had a very hard time getting Ste'ce to do something, and she did it once, and it was flawless. And I was like, "What in the world?" And so I was like, "How'd you do that?" And she was like, "Let me see how you do it." And then I did it, and she was like, "How do you do that so quick? You reacted so quickly. What did you think about?" And I was like, "I didn't think about anything. I just did it." And she was like, "How was that productive?" And I was like, "It's not." I felt like I was being scolded, low key, but I was like, "It's not." But that's true. Why are you reacting so fast? You didn't even think about it. How's that productive? And you want your kids to react that way? You want them to be like that? I don't.
Right.
So that was always my first thought. How do I want my little kids be adults? How do I want them to be adults as adults? Do I want them to quickly react? No. I want them to stop and think about
Mm-hmm.
it. So I started doing that after she told me that everything. I applied it to everything in my life, honey. Now I am very slow to react at my age. I'm very slow to react. If something happens, people always say, "How are you so nonchalant?" Like I'm processing it. I'm processing.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you how I feel about it later. So when something happens with my kids, it's very easy to be like, that's why I always make that face. I'm because I'm thinking about it. When something
Mm-hmm.
happens, when they do something weird, when they let they intrusive thoughts wins, I'm just like, what are they thinking about it? And then
Mm-hmm.
most of the time, I'm like, I probably would have did that too.
Yeah.
So I said all that to say this: stop reacting quickly. If your kid's yelling, first you need to think why they're yelling, and then you're mature. You can decide if it's good or bad at that point. But you
Mm-hmm.
can't decide nothing if you ain't listening to what they're saying. Oh, oh.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Mic drop. You feel me?
Mic drop.
Right. Oh, thanks for the sound effects. I appreciate it. But yes, that is our segment. We thank you guys for joining us, me and Lexa. I don't know what we're gonna call this podcast, but hey, you guys can help us name it. Go ahead and put your names down in the comments. We're gonna talk about anything and everything we want to, and we'll also talk about stuff that you want to. Put that in the comments too, okay? Any ideas on what you want us to talk about, or stuff that you're just like, ooh, this racks my brain, or something that you're like, ooh, I wish I could talk to somebody about this. Hey, we're gonna talk about it for you. Okay? Put it in the comments. All right.
Yeah.
Bye.